friends. This guy over here, he's Herb Reichert from Stereophile. We go back before there even was a Stereophile. Well, actually, not that far back,
Not
but
that
almost,
far.
but almost that far back. So Herb, we're here on the streets of Brooklyn. Dogs, people, everything's happening.
Wind.
Wind. Hopefully the wind won't be too bad. But the subject I want to start with, because you've been in this as deep as I have. So my question is, where did it all start for you? What was your first system like?
I built race cars, drag race cars, you know, as a teenager, and I worked with these older guys, and one of them was, you know, he was a kit builder and an audiophile and an electronics guy. And he got really into solid state. And so he had a Dynaco 120 kit he built, and he gave me his Dynaco Stereo 70 already built.
A tube amplifier.
Right, a tube amplifier. And then he gave me his Pass 3 preamp, and then he gave me, last but not least, the XA25 speakers. And you know what? I'm old. It was one of the best systems I've ever owned. I mean, I was shocked. And then he gave me his damn 120. And I kept it for like a week. I thought this thing was evil. I mean, it was like listening to your music with a glass cutter in the background.
But that's early solid state. Really early.
That was early solid. That was the early solid state, I think.
Right.
But people, you read magazines, it gave it good reviews.
Well, it measured better.
It measured better.
And that's all that matters, right? Why listen when you can measure?
Uh,
Anyway, moving right along.
The guy who gave it to me, that's what he believed. The guy who gave me this gear, that's exactly what he believed.
A measurement guy. Okay, well, you know, each to their own.
And then he built his own. He was quite clever, more than quite clever. And he built a 20-watt Class A stereo amplifier, solid state. And it ran really hot. He said, try this out if you don't like solid state. He said, it's much better than the 120. And it was really good.
Wow.
Except it set fire to my living room after like 6 days. So that one.
It was so hot, it was warming up your
right.
living room? Okay.
It was like, you know, but it sort of taught me. And like, you know, through the 70s, you know, if you were to extend the question and say, well, which solid state amps did you like? First one I liked after that because it ran even hotter. It was the Andy Rappaport. I think it was called the Amp 1.
Yeah.
And both of these, when I had the Amp 1, I was like, oh, shit, it's going to set fire to my house. But it didn't. In between, I built a bunch of Hafler kits. But I think I just convinced myself they were good. In retrospect, I don't like them.
Really?
And they were really
like
hard.
The DH110? The DH101?
Yeah, I built the DH101 preamp, I built the DH200 and the DH120, and I always coveted a 500, the big one.
Yeah.
But then all those Lin name people showed up, and they had all that name gear. And I was listening to it, and I'm going, you could cut glass with this, too. This is really, like, hard. And they called the amp the chrome bumper amp, and I'm going, that's what it sounds like, a chrome bumper. And so I sold all the Hafler and I went back to tubes.
So do you think, looking back over most of your life as an audiophile, that you still are more of a tube guy than a solid state?
Yes. I'm not a giant fan of tube amps with a lot of feedback. What I am is I like Class A solid state and Class A single-ended tube amps. Okay. Everything else just seems like, how can we save money, make it lighter, make it cooler?
Right.
You know, everything else looks like, how do we save money?
Right. Yeah, make it cheaper, cooler, more convenient. Sound, schmound. Yeah, all those other things are more important.
Right.
Right. So...
and I've got a lot, you know, it's been a lot of years, 68 to now. That's at least 30 years. You know, it's like, that's a long time.
But you know, it's funny though. I mean, I think you're going to be on this in this category, that for a lot of people, that first system where you were just, you know, playing your tunes and you're young and the music's really, really happening, it's such a huge part of your life when you're, you know, 18, 20 years old, it's hard to, you want to get back to that. You want to get back to that kind of, oh my God, I got to hear this thing energy, right? But that was so amazing. And of course, Herb and I are almost the same age. So...
Like 2 months apart.
Yeah, music was really peaking in 68, 69, 70. So we were right in it, man. It was fantastic.
The way you get back to it, though, is you get yourself some 45 RPM records.
Oh, okay.
They play a lot. It's really surprising. You wonder, oh, man, I was riding around in the car with my girlfriend, and I heard this on the radio. Get you a 45 of that song you heard, and you're like, oh, that's what it sounds like.
Yeah. No, it's...
But I was a blues fan back then, before there was the Stones. And so I was grateful that they were actually bringing this more into the mainstream. And I grew up in Chicago. They actually started playing more black music on mainstream AM radio, partly because of the Stones and the Beatles, you know.
Yeah, it's funny that they're British bands, but their early records, they're playing American songs.
Right. But they
Chuck
brought
Berry.
attention to artists that, you know, even to this day might have had. I was looking at this picture. I don't know the album that well, I'm sorry to say. But it shows Eric Clapton in the front seat of some kind of caddy convertible, and B.B. King or somebody.
King, yeah. Riding with the King.
Riding with the King. And I remember, and I got to tell you this, I was going to a blues club back at that era, or, you know, in the 60s. And there was, in front of the blues club, there was this Cadillac, and it said King 1 on the license plate. And we were like 16, and we were walking down the street, and we're going, look, man, King 1. The next thing you know, this other Cadillac comes in, just smashes into the back of it.
It was King 2?
It was King 2. And it was like, that really happened. And I forget which King got out of the car, but it was either, you know, Albert or something tells me it was Albert King.
Oh, of course.
But I can't remember.
Did they have a rivalry? I never even thought about it that way.
I don't know, but this is, to the best of my, you know, too many blows to the head memory, that really happened. It was on Wells Street in Chicago.
Wow. Yep. So so what about, you know, speaking about outsized personalities, I think high-end audio has them, you know.
Absolutely.
So many people, you know, like Dan. For me, one of the biggies early on was Dan D'Agostino, you know. He was very intense.
Is he bigger than Jimmy Bongiorno?
I didn't know Jimmy Bongiorno, so I can't say.
He didn't even show up looking like King 1.
Okay. No, he wasn't like that. I think he didn't have any hair even back then, but he, you know, he was very intense in his passions and in his beliefs. And I remember, you know, I said to him at one point, you know, Dan, because I had a Krell KSA-1, a KSA-100, and I said, you know, Dan, I bypassed the output fuses in the amplifier, and I think it sounds better. And he'd say, that can't make any difference. And then tiptoes started happening, and I said, Dan, I put tiptoes under my amplifier. It sounds better. And he's like, I'm an engineer. That can't make any difference. But then the funny thing was that 6 months later, a year later, he was selling as an accessory tiptoes, or his version of tiptoes, to put under his amplifiers. So even though he was an engineer, and he said it couldn't make any difference, he eventually was selling them. But so for you, who were the biggies in just people in the biz?
The reason I'm in audio is probably the same reason I like a lot of the people in audio. And it's kind of where eccentric weirdo, but smart eccentric weirdos end up.
Right.
Not all of them, but certainly it's a safe haven for people like that.
I agree.
Early on, big, you know, the whole Bascom King, Jimmy Bongiorno, that sort of groove. And then, I mean, big for me was meeting, and, you know, so many blows to the head, but it was meeting like Sid Smith,
Okay.
Saul Morantz. I mean, these people were, you know, had a big impact. But, you know, the 90s for me, and it goes back to when I gave up on Solid State with that Lynn Name stuff, was meeting Peter Quartrup in Audio Note.
I was going to say. Yeah.
And it was funny. I remember, you know, I mean, all we did, we had adventures. We drove at very high speeds in very fancy Mercedes, and we traveled all over the world.
Wow.
And we had an Angaku. And, you know, we sold $1 million hi-fis. Mike Trey helped me with this. And there's something about, first of all, the people you meet when you're selling $1 million hi-fis. First of all, they don't read Stereophile.
Or the absolute sound.
or the Absolute Sound, or any of
Or
these
watch
men.
YouTube.
They don't even know. Some of them never even heard of it.
Right.
But they're buying $1 million hi-fi. And they did. I'd say as a whole, they had this notion of, you had to make a sound that people would walk in the room and go, oh my God, that does sound good. You needed immediate recognition. At that price level, if you have to go like this and go, oh, I think the sound stage is a little bigger, you're dead.
Right.
I mean, you got to walk in the room and they go. And then we used to call it selling smirking power. So you could sort of sit there and smirk because you knew it sounded good when you put the record on. And during that period, I learned to make demonstrations in a way. I never wanted to play audiophile discs. And so I always wanted to find stuff that everybody knew, but it would sound good, it would obviously make a good impression.
So give me some examples.
Well, one of the ones that was really good, everybody in the world knows Bob Dylan, and everybody in the world knows those Columbia things are kind of like, they're not exactly audiophile pressings. And so I found the soundtrack to Don't Look Back,
Okay.
which was recorded on a Nagra 2-track.
Okay.
Direct from Zimmy's mouth. And people would come in the room and go, oh my God, I never heard Dylan sound like that. We went for master tapes early on. But there's people like Tim DeParavicini.
He's a character.
Yeah, I mean, there's the world Jason Stoddart, Mike Moffat, Nelson Pass. I mean, these are like cool-ass dudes, man, Why wouldn't you want to hang out with them? I mean, I'd love to be standing here right now as, Jason Stoddart or Nelson Pass and just telling stories and, that's the beauty of this.
I don't think I'm over-romanticizing my memories, but it never felt like they're getting into this to make, to get rich or even to make a great living. They did it because they had to. It was their passion. That was what was driving them was, I want to make a great amplifier.
Absolutely.
The fact that some of them did really well wasn't the primary motive, at least not at first.
I think the talent, one of the things I realized, I built my own amps for a long time and repaired a lot of amps. And as far as stuff that I've owned, I mean, when I was doing Audio Note and just before it, I was really lucky. I basically got to buy the history of audio and listen to it. Somebody'd say, well, man, you never had quads. So I'd go out and I'd have a quasi Levinson HQD system or stack quads or quads. And, oh, you never had this. So I had enough money in the early 90s to go out and buy this stuff and I could listen to it. And I think today people think, oh, just get me a generic, Class D amplifier and, I'll buy a speaker that measures well and I end up with a good sound. I wouldn't bet all my headphones on that. So you learn from having a lot of gear. And I'm sure no one beats Steve at like having a lot of gear. But I have been lucky. I've had probably more gear, maybe more than any reviewer. I mean, in terms of wide range, I had Western Electric, I've had every Marantz, at most all the Macintosh that wasn't solid state and some solid state.
But wait, what were the horn speakers you had at the Firehouse when I met you?
I went through horn speakers, but the main ones were Altec 47 Voice of the Theaters, but I had TAD, I never had clips. Of all the things I've owned, I've never owned a clipped speaker.
Wow.
And I'm not 100% sure why. But I bought Spender BC1s just to see what they were. I bought all kinds of weird stuff.
Oh, and don't forget, you're really into LS358s.
I've always been into. I bought my first pair in the early 90s. I actually didn't buy it. Like I said, everything I get is kind of handed down or swapped. This pair came, it was 1984, it came from the CBS television studios, and they were wall mount, and they had been maintained by Rogers, and recalibrated every few years. And I still have those. And now I have 3 pairs of, LS358s. As we speak, right this minute, today, I'd say it's my #1 reference speaker. It's the one I listen to. I can't even bring myself to take it out of the system.
Yeah. So we'll segue into any, recent stuff or, not so recent, affordable things you want to talk about?
Yeah, yeah. I like affordable stuff. That was one of my, when I first started at Stereophile, I said, I'm going to stick to affordable stuff. Sam Telling it kind of passed on to the next plane of audio writing, and there was nobody, everyone wanted to write about, the Maserati stuff, or the skull level, as Fremer calls it. I said, no, I want to pitch something to your guys. I know your readers. I watch all your videos. And if you haven't had a turntable in a long time, and you're listening to a $300 DAC or something like that, I would like to encourage you to buy like a used turntable and an Audio-Technica VM or AT95 $35 cartridge.
Wow.
I just did a review where I reviewed all these under $100 and $200 cartridges. These things are ridiculously good. Ridiculous. I mean, if you've never tried them, or if you already have a turntable, a Rega or something like that, try one of these Audio-Technica cartridges. Until you've heard it, you won't realize how good they are.
You're a big fan of that the Pioneer direct drive.
Right, the PLX 1000.
Yeah.
Audio-Technica on that. Actually, I have an Lin LP12 from 1984 also, and it has a Lin basic arm with an Audio-Technica AT95 cartridge. I don't know what this thing would go if I wanted to sell it on eBay. What, 1,500?
Maybe more.
Maybe more. But it's a Lin basic arm. I doubt it would be over 2,000, and it is crazy good, crazy. I mean, I'd put it against $5,000 turntables. It's amazing. Electronics-wise, I mean, there's one thing just keeps jumping out of the deck like a tarot card, and that's the Rogue Sphinx. Right. Steve Guttenberg recommended that I write about it for my first ever Stereophile review.
Oh, that was the first one?
That was my first Stereophile review on your. In fact, I think you loaned it to me.
Yeah,
and I wrote this on-spec review, and I turned it in to John Atkinson, and that's how I got my job at Stereophile. And now, 6 years later or more, I put that thing in my system, and it just kills. The new one, the V3.
Right, yeah. Right.
I mean, get you a V3 and a good turntable, and it's got a killer phono stage that loves the AT95 Audio-Technica, and there's a lot of other cartridges in that price range. But and then we got the Denafrips Aries 2 DAC.
Yes. Oh my.
That just seems like crazy. It's one of the best digital products I've ever heard, and it's under $1,000.
Yeah, well under, actually.
I mean, if you haven't heard that, avail yourself the opportunity. It's really, really good. Yeah. And Steve turned me on to that too.
I did.
He's my guru and mentor.
Thank you. And speakers?
Well, we've mentioned the LS35As.
Well, we gotta wait.
Right now,
the Klipsch RP600.
Oh, the Klipsch RP600. My go-to speaker is that because I can run a 300B amp, and I use this L-Kit TA8600 300B single-ended amp to drive it. And I mean, I could retire with that. It's a really, 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 really nice. And I use a Sun Valley phono stage, the SV EQ 1616D. God, Herb remembered it. And it costs $820. It's a kit, and it has a 274B rectifier tube, and it has all kinds of like equalizations. It really likes playing 78 RPM records, which you can do also with your PLX 1000 turntable. I mean, you can have a lot of fun for just $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Huge fun. And maybe, if your room is happy. One more speaker that I just heard, and it sort of blew me away, and I'm kind of anxious to spend more time with it. Golden Ear BRX.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I mean, wow again. I mean, you'd have to spend, I've reviewed $6,000 speakers that weren't even close to as good as this thing. Well, the best part of my relationship with you is how we turn each other on to music by sending little pictures.
Right.
In text messages. And a couple of different artists with bird sounds you've turned me on to.
Cosmo Sheldrake, the man.
Right, Sheldrake. And then you showed me an LP of it. And it looked so crusty and like original. It looked like the original Berliner LP. But I've been really into the Art Ensemble of Chicago and this group. Yeah, he's now on, the album I'm listening to is called Your Queen is a Reptile.
Oh, I know who you mean. I know who it is. Yeah, I can't think of the name either.
I'll think of his name.
Yeah, yeah.
But the album, and it's very political, and the guy's a British avant-jazz saxophone player. And these albums are wild, they're intense, and they have this they have a driving force. When most people think of free jazz or avant-jazz, they're thinking, ooh, and it's all getting too weird for them, and they go back to listening to early Coltrane or something. But this stuff, it's just like boom, boom. It has forces, and it has rhythms on another level, and the rhythms and counter rhythms. I'm addicted to it right now.
Yeah. No, they're pretty amazing.
What other questions?
So you've been at Stereophile, what is it, 6 years? Or
Something
7?
like that, yeah.
Wow. It's incredible.
I like having a column. That's the best fun. When I first got there, and I was nobody, I was the cub reporter. I go, I want a column. And John Askerson looked at me like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But I did get one, and now I have a 12 times a year column, and it's fun. I get to kind of just make stuff up and have fun.
Yeah, you get to do, it's more free form for the viewers.
I get to be more Herb.
Yeah, I mean, reviews have to conform to certain things you have to do in a review. In a column, you can sort of do whatever you want. There's not many rules for writing columns.
A term paper versus a poem.
That's so nice. Yeah. Anyway, Herb, I think we've done it.
Very good.
Thank you. Very, not windy, but a nice day here in Brooklyn.
No, we need some more little doggies.
Yeah, no more little doggies.
This is your neighborhood has the best dogs. They're the most unpretentious little dogs. Chelsea has slightly pretentious dogs.
Anyway, thanks so much, Herb. This was a blast.
It's always a blast.
I knew it would be.
I love hanging with you,
This
man.
is fantastic. We hardly ever get to see
you
each
got
other.
a really good group of people who follow your videos. I read the comments every day. Good people.
Comments are the best part. Don't bother. Hey, everybody, don't watch the videos. Just read the comments. It's like, what's happening?
Well, if the video gets boring, you have something to read.
Exactly. I would advise that, definitely. Anyway, thanks for doing this, Herb. This
My
was fun.
honor.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. My name is Steve Guttenberg. This is Herb Reichert from Stereophile. You are watching, or you just have already watched, the Audiophiliac Daily Show. If you dig it, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you already have subscribed, thank you so much for doing so. Check out the Patreon, blah, 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 blah. And now I can say my time here is done. I'm done for the day. It's election day. I'm going to be up all night, and it'll be amazing to wake up tomorrow morning. Anyway, bye-bye, guys. Bye, Herb. And Herb.
Yes.
My question for you is, how you doing? What's happening?
Say it again.
We'll start it.
Brooklyn your neighborhood has the best dogs ever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, we are the best dogs. We know Herbie. We know Herbie. We love Herbie. Yeah, Herbie's the best. We're Herbie friends. Yeah. Where's Monster? He's my friend too. I had a chocolate toy poodle.
Oh, isn't that nice?
His name was Monster. He lived 14 years.